Well, good morning, everybody. It's Peter Russell here from Oxlep. I hope you can hear me. Actually, I've got a couple of colleagues who I can still see on their webcam. So, Anna, can you hear me okay still?
I can, yes, thank you.
Brilliant. And Anna, can you confirm as well for me that you can see our holding slide, our welcome? Excellent. Thank you very much. So I'd say, as I said, good morning to our delegates. We're still waiting for a few people to join us. Just to let you know, while we're waiting, you'll be joining us with your microphones, or you should be joining us with your microphones on mute. If you've not used GoToWebinar before, it's a little bit more fiddly than some of the other platforms. But you will be able to unmute yourself later in the session. So, and we really would like to hear from you. So please do use that facility. What I don't think you're able to do is show yourselves. So you can't switch on your webcams, I think, with this system, which is a shame, because there's only going to be something like 10 of us on the call today. So unfortunately, we won't be able to see you, but we do want to hear from you. The other way that we can hear from you is if you use the questions or chat box. Now, you should have a control panel somewhere in your view, and towards the bottom of the control panel is the questions or chat box. So throughout the webinar, please use that box to post any questions that come up, any concerns that you've got. If you've got technical problems, then let us know. We're joined today by my colleague Georgia, who will keep an eye out for those. We can't promise to help you, but we will try and do that. But more importantly, probably, we'd like to hear from you about any questions that you'd like to raise during the session. What I'll do is I'll keep a monitor on that and bring those to the attention of our speakers. So, yeah, I think we will, it's 3 minutes past 10, so we'll get underway. We're still waiting for a couple of people, but I hope they'll join us during the course of the next couple of minutes. So, as I said, I'm Peter Russell. I'm the Innovation Advisor at Oxlep. Thank you for joining us this morning in what is the fourth, I think, of our Innovation Briefing series. So the aim of these sessions is to bring to your attention some of the facilities, some of the services, some of the opportunities that are available to you as innovators within the Oxfordshire system. Previous sessions we've covered finance for innovation and how to go about making a good application. We've also covered most recently the business of collaboration, so how to collaborate for innovation. And today's session follows on really nicely from that, because we are talking about one of the main mechanisms for promoting collaboration between a higher education institute, a university, and SMEs. And we're going to be talking about the Knowledge Transfer Partnership Programme, KTPs. Over the years, it's changed its names a few times, but it's currently called KTP. It's a massively successful mechanism, and successful because it does deliver for the SMEs, for the companies that take part, as well as for the people involved, the KTP associates, and the institution which is hosting the program. So I've in the past, I've actually run KTP programs on behalf of a couple of different universities. So I've got direct experience of how powerful it can be when set up properly and when managed properly, both from the point of view of the institution and the company concerned. Now, one of the great things of today is if you've been part of the previous sessions, we have heard from a couple of other colleagues, but it's mainly been me. Luckily today for you, it's not me. It's we got two guest speakers, both from Oxford Brookes University. We've got Anna and Yayoi. Now Yayoi is actually working at the moment as a KTP associate, so it's fantastic to have her with us to hear about how it works in practice and one person's experience, at a well-known local organisation. And we've got Anna, who's got much more experience than me in actually setting up and running successful KTPs recently on behalf of Oxford Brookes, but other institutions as well. So I'm really pleased to be able to hand over to Anna in a couple of minutes, in a couple of seconds, to take us through most of today's session, and we'll hear from Yayoi as well. Then we'll wrap up with questions around about 10:45. So there's plenty of time at the end to get a bit of a debate going. As I said, it's not a huge group, so we really do want to hear from you today. And just to re-emphasize, use the chat or the questions box at any point during the seminar, the webinar, and I'll bring those questions to the attention of Anna. So I'm going to move Anna's slides forward, so I'm going to obviously stay on the call. I may switch off my webcam because I've got a particularly messy and distracting background. So is that okay, Anna, if I hand over to you to take us through most of today's session about KTPs, and just to say thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us, and Yayoi as well, thank you for joining me. It's always good to have your input into these things.
That's great. So Anna, do you want to go ahead and tell us, I'll move the slides for you.
Sure.
People probably, I don't know how much people will know about KTPs, but as I said, the previous session, we were looking at collaboration, and people may have been on that webinar or may have viewed the recording of that webinar. So this is one of the main mechanisms, isn't it, that universities have been deploying to, well, the government's been deploying to help with these kind of innovation collaborations.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been around for, I think, 45 years this year, in various names and in various guises, but essentially, yes, it's a really good way of helping companies to grow and to develop using expertise that they need, but expertise that's held by UK universities and more recently by catapults and other research-led institutions as well.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
So, do you want me to move your slides on? Just
tell me, please.
Shout at me whenever you want.
Yeah, if you could move on to my first one, that'd be great.
Have you got that?
Yes, I have. Thank you very much. So quick introductions, I think we'll start with that. I'm Anna Verghese. I'm KTP manager at Oxford Brookes University. I've been doing KTP at Brookes and at my previous university for nearly 14 years now, and I've supported very large companies, multinationals, right down to very small, very niche four-man organisations as well. So it really is a scheme that is beneficial and accessible to all kinds of businesses from all kinds of sectors, really. So I'm going to lead you through the basics of KTP today, and Yayoi, who is our current KTP associate at Blenheim Palace, very exciting project, I have to say, that one. She's going to share a little bit about her experiences with us as well. So if we can move on, Peter, that'd be great. Thank you. So this slide was produced by Innovate UK, and it is designed to give you a flavour really of the national picture for KTP. So you can see by some of the figures there that it's not a small programme at all. It represents 5.5% of the entire UKRI, UK Research and Innovation portfolio. And at the point of writing, which I think was the end of last year, we've covered up my slide, thank you. We had 860 associate places all around the country, and there was 84 million, I think it was thereabouts, currently invested. As a guide, there is around 30 million a year available for KTP projects. And additional money as well, which you'll see a bit later, for management KTP, which is slightly different in terms of the focus, but essentially it works in the same way. To pick out a couple of other statistics there, you can see in the top right that the success rate is 85% nationally. So if we get to the point where we are going to make an application to the KTP programme, we do so being as confident as we can be really of the success of the project. So there are two ways that we make that happen. It's very much through the review mechanism that we have before we actually submit. So it is never a case of here's a blank application form, off you go, good luck. It's very much supported all the way through. So I'll talk about my role a little bit more later on, but essentially I'm there to guide you through the process. So I will talk to you about how to present your project. I will advise on the way to write it. I'll play a bit of devil's advocate if I need to as well, just to really make sure that whatever we put forward as an application is in the strongest possible position that it can be. And likewise, I will also let you know if there are any risks, if there are any weak points in the application, and then you can make a considered decision as to whether or not you want to go ahead and apply. Another really important statistic there, I think, is middle column, second one down, that it returns 630 to 672 million a year to the UK economy. So that just shows, obviously a lot of that is from increased tax paid by the businesses. So it just shows the growth potential that is actually there. So it's a very well established programme, and it is very beneficial for the partners involved, and it's very much intended to be a balance of benefits as well. So while the university gets benefits from the grant, and I'll dig into those a little bit more later on as well, it's also about financial return, and most importantly about significant growth for the company partner. So if we can move on again, Peter, that would be great. Thank you. So it's designed to be a three-way partnership between a company, and I'll expand on that definition in a second, a university and the KTP associate. So the company will join a KTP partnership because, as I said at the beginning, it's very much about needing expertise that a UK university holds. So the project can include things like developing a new product. Perhaps you have a problem with an existing product and you want to take it to the next level, or even I had one once where the company would be unable to trade because of a change in legislation if they didn't amend a particular aspect of one of their products. So they wanted the university's support to be able to do that. So it can be on the kind of product side, it can also be on cultural change, it can be on breaking into new markets. It really depends very much on your business. So it's not like other grant routes where the criteria are fairly ring-fenced perhaps to certain subject matter. If your company needs the expertise to be able to grow and to develop, then potentially there is a KTP there. And the output, or the main output, I should say, for the KTP from the company perspective is about growth, and it has to be quantifiable growth. So we are looking for a hockey stick, really. One of my advisors called it that, growth curve in terms of how the company is going to develop using the knowledge that they get from the university. From the university perspective, it's a really excellent mechanism for knowledge transfer. So the academics will be looking to see how they can take the knowledge and the research that they've developed within the university infrastructure, but apply it to a real life scenario and actual company to make a difference in the real world. So that's predominantly the university's driver. I'll expand on it a little bit later on, as I said, but you can see also there that the arrow is two ways. So the knowledge will travel from the university into the company and be embedded there for their future use, but also knowledge travels from the company back into the university. So we can show how the results of the KTP project can benefit future research, future teaching as well. And the third aspect of that, my old advisor used to call it a three-legged stool, equal benefits for each partner, they've called it their skilled workforce, so the KTP associate. So once we have the partnership set up and the grant has hopefully been secured, then the university will appoint a KTP associate to actually do the work on the project. So they are based in the company partner, as Yayoi is based at Blenheim Palace. In theory, at the moment, she's not actually there, of course, because of COVID, but hopefully that will change soon. But they are based in the company and within the company infrastructure to actually deliver the project and the work plan that we put together, supported by the academics, but also to deliver the business case and to support the embedding of that knowledge as well, because the key aspect of a KTP is that at the end, when the academics leave, and if the associate chooses to leave as well, then the most important, the knowledge is left behind so that the company can continue to use it and to develop it further as time goes on. If it's a case of the university comes and does something and then takes everything back with it, that's not KTP. So it's about long-term use and long-term growth and long-term knowledge development within the company. So if we can move on, Peter, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yep, of course.
Thank you. So to look a little bit further into the, I guess, eligibility criteria and some of the detail for KTP, when it comes to the company, or as it says here, the business partner, it's predominantly a scheme for UK companies that pay UK tax. There is some scope for not-for-profit organisations being involved and some very limited scope for charities as well, but it's predominantly for UK registered companies. A little note on that as well is that if there's a UK registered subsidiary of an overseas parent, that's also okay, but the key there is that the knowledge has to be exploited within the UK first and foremost. It can't be a case of the knowledge being taken straight back to the overseas parent. So lots of opportunity there, I think, for different businesses. And as I alluded to earlier, you can have very small businesses right up to the multinationals as well. Public sector organisations are not eligible, but if you have a business that works a lot with public sector, then do talk to me, because there are ways to involve, for example, NHS trusts as associates on the project. They won't have grant attached to it, but they can still be involved if that's appropriate for your business. The next one down on the company side is that they have to have their own premises. That might seem a bit weird at the moment because most of us are working from home, but regardless of that, at the moment, the scheme rule is that there has to be some sort of physical office space. We are hoping that that's going to change, and we're expecting at some point this year, I hope, some sort of announcement to be a little bit more flexible on that point. But at the moment, it is a scheme requirement to have your own office space, and that can't be a home office either, and nor can we have remote working. As I said, a bit strange given the current circumstances, but let me know your own situation if that's an issue or a challenge. We can see what we can do. The next one down, a 2-year trading history is preferred. That used to be a hard and fast rule for the scheme. You had to have that first 2 years under your belt, but actually now it's a little bit more flexible. So I do have companies that I'm talking to who haven't quite hit that 2-year mark, but it might be that they have strong investment, a strong business plan. You will certainly have to provide additional documentation and evidence to support your security of your business, I suppose, if you haven't quite hit that 2-year mark. but it's no longer the hard and fast rule that it used to be. So if this sounds like your organisation and you're not quite there, then do still have the conversation if you like the sound of the KTP mechanism. The next one, minimum 5 FTE in terms of employees. Again, they say minimum, but I've done some with 4, even 3 in the past. So again, if you're not quite at that 5 mark, then don't rule yourself out immediately. Get in touch and at least have the conversation and see what can be done there. But the second to last point on the company side is really important. So we're looking for not necessarily defined scale-ups, but businesses that have the potential and the resources and the intention to be able to support significant growth. So if you've got the ambition, then absolutely, again, have the conversation. KTP could be a good mechanism for you. And the final one there is affordability. So we have to show in the application that our company partners are able to afford their contribution to a KTP, which I'll come to in a second. We do that through the accounts, but equally, if it's a fairly new business, we can do it through letters of support from investors, perhaps ring-fenced company contribution by the parent company, things like that. So there are lots of ways to do that depending on company situation. So that's
a quick question at that point, Anna.
Sure. Yeah.
Just obviously we deal with, we see quite a lot of companies who have quite flexible arrangements with regard to things like number of employees, and it's the most expedient way to do it when you're in a relatively early stage.
Sure.
So what I'm hearing is that there is some leeway in some of these criteria. There is some flexibility, and the individual profile of the company will be looked at rather than a blank sort of no, you don't qualify.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And that's become increasingly the case over the last year or two. I would say when I first started out, you had to have the minimum number. They had to be all full-time staff on the payroll. You had to have the office and so on and so forth. But increasingly, there is a room for discussion, I would say. So, you know, at the moment, I have one company I'm talking to who has 3.5 FTE, I think, but they are supported by a bunch of regular consultant kind of work. So the key on the number of staff point is that there has to be this support structure there for the associate. So we can't just have one person and put the associate with them, because they wouldn't have a backup in terms of support. Equally, if it was just a one-person organisation, then if that person chose not to do it anymore, that doesn't support the deliverability, I suppose, of the project, and it creates risk. So absolutely, if you're not quite at any or all of those, have the conversation anyway, because it may be that, you know, you have plans. If you're on 2 FTE now, you've got plans to recruit 3 more in the next 1.5 years. So let's have those conversations for sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so in terms of the project itself, 12 to 36 months long. The average is at the moment about 26, 27 months. It comes in 1-month blocks. My advice is to keep it fairly flexible in terms of your duration at the early stage of discussions, at least, because once the academics get involved, you'll find that they will give their own ideas, and your project scope will flex until you've actually got it pinned down. And equally, the academics will say to you, oh, we need at least 26 months to be able to achieve that, sometimes longer. But 12 to 36 months. I would add that the paperwork and the assessment criteria is the same, regardless of whether you put in a 12-month or a 36-month project. So it's to a point as well about judging what is the most likely duration to secure success when it comes to the grant application. The associate is based at the company. I've touched on this already. Under normal circumstances, they're there. So we can't currently support complete remote working, COVID aside, of course. And the reason for that is partly because of the embedding. It's a lot better to embed new knowledge if you're actually there to do it. But partly because, as I've touched on it just now, the support mechanism for the associate as well. But that may change in the future to be a bit more flexible, but it hasn't as yet. In terms of the next one, 0.5 days a week academic time, that is really important. And again, COVID aside, we would expect the academics to be physically present in the office of the company partner. Half a day a week, if that works for you, if it's a local company, but equally you can agree to 1 day a fortnight after the initial project start period, the first 6 months or so, if that's appropriate. And equally, there is half a day a week in the project duration dedicated to associate training and development as well, because as I said earlier, it's very much about a three-legged stool when it comes to the benefits of KTP. So from the associate perspective, they are allowed to spend time on their own development relating not just to the project, but to their future career as well. And there is some budget available to them to support that. The final point there as well, it's not a PhD, postdoc or a consultancy, is really important as well. We have to differentiate between the KTP mechanism as a knowledge transfer mechanism rather than a research project, or on the consultancy side, if the academics can come and spend a bit of time and they already know the answers to whatever your project challenge is, then that's consultancy, it's not KTP. It has to be challenging for everybody that's involved. So those are the key points in terms of how the projects are constructed, I suppose. In terms of the funding, we have 6 closing dates a year. So the next one is 14th of April, and then June, September and December for the rest of 2021. And we get the results in about 8 to 10 weeks from the date of submission. So it's fairly rapid in terms of turnaround time for grant applications. And you can see the grant rates there on the slide. So 67% grant for SMEs, 50-50 for large companies, and you've got the approximate annual cost there. The actual grant itself covers a number of areas. So it covers the associate salary, including NI and pension contributions. It covers the half a day a week of academic time. It covers the university overheads, access to library and facilities. It covers my support for the duration of the KTP journey. And there are also contributions to consumables, travel and training and development for the associate. So obviously the details of that depends very much on the nature of the project and who is involved, but you've got a guideline there in terms of the costs, and we invoice for those monthly, so there are no big upfront payments or anything like that. So I can talk a bit more individually with people if they want to know a bit more about how the grant works. So if we can move on, Peter, that'd be great.
Yep.
Thank you. This is just a guide. As I said, it is a scheme for the vast majority of businesses will be eligible, and you can see very much the emphasis there is on the small to micro end of the spectrum. So if you think you're thinking perhaps, oh, I might be a bit small, then have the conversation anyway, because even if KTP isn't right and you're not quite eligible now, you might be in 6 months' time. So have the conversations and get on radar, I would say early. It's a really good idea to do that. If we can move on again, that'd be great. Thank you. So what's in it for companies? Well, it's about embedding expertise and generating new knowledge, first of all. And the result of that is that companies are able to create competitive advantage through innovation that would have been faster because of that new knowledge and because of the transfer of the knowledge from the university. So all of this, as I spoke about earlier, contributes to that hockey stick growth curve that we're looking for in our applications. It also gives you a very cost-effective way of working with UK universities. So because the associate is based off-site, we only charge 50% of FEC on the overheads. So it is a really very cost-effective way of working with a university ecosystem, I would suppose. And in terms of the actual growth, it increases revenue and profits through access to new markets, new products, increased productivity and better processes as well. So again, it comes back to what I was saying at the beginning. The project can be whatever your company needs to grow. And in terms of the knowledge itself, the knowledge that you access to do that, it can be multidisciplinary, and that's a really valid thing to have at the back of your mind when you're deciding whether or not a KTP could be good for your business, because it may be that part of your academic team come from the technology faculty, but you may decide actually it would be really good to have some input from the business school as well. So we can build an academic team that is exact to the needs of your business and to the needs of whatever it is that you want to do to facilitate that growth that we were talking about earlier on. And finally, projects are supported by a knowledge transfer advisor who acts as a monitoring officer for Innovate UK. And they are there as an additional source of support as well to make sure that you're achieving everything that you can from the project, and obviously to make sure that we are spending the grant money appropriately as well. So if we can move on again.
Yeah, just before we do that, Anna,
sure.
I mean, just this emphasizes something for me, which is the strategic nature of the projects that we, you know, the KTP program is really aiming to support. And for companies, and this, I've seen this happen.
Yeah,
it's a real opportunity to take an in-depth look at something which is important, very important for that company's future. So it's not a quick fix to a short-term problem.
Yeah,
it's how do we gather people with different experience, different knowledge to help us determine
move up a level. Yeah,
what the company might look like in the future.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've seen that. Sorry, I'll let you carry on.
That's okay. So yeah, absolutely, I agree. It's not about the quick wins or the quick fixes. It's about long-term strategic change for that business, going up a level and really looking towards the future rather than just short-term activity, really.
And the mix of skills that a KTP can bring to a company isn't just the associate. I mean, we'll hear from one in the moment, but it's when these projects are successful, the number of academics or teams or departments that get involved can be broader than you think if they're managed.
Definitely. Yeah, the biggest one that I've ever done at my previous university had 6 academics from 3 departments. So wow. Just to put that, it was a bit of a beast to manage, but it was.
You deserve a medal for that one.
But it made sense in the context of the project. Everybody brought a different perspective on the same challenge. And the project ended up really, really successful. So you can absolutely construct an academic team, and that's part of my role to help to do that, to really fulfill the needs of your business and to make sure that you have all the expertise that you need to achieve whatever it is that you have on your radar.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks. And just to remind everybody, use the chat box or question box if you've got anything that occurs to you, and we'll talk about it in a while. Sure. I'll move on, shall I, Anna?
Please, that'd be great. So Yayoi can perhaps expand on this a little bit in a short while, but in terms of what's in it for the associates, I touched on this just now, we're really looking to support them in the growth of their own development and their future career direction as well. So it's a really good opportunity for them to gain experience of managing a challenging real world project. So it's not just for them about the technical delivery, it's about managing and learning to manage a multidisciplinary team, They have to balance the sometimes conflicting requirements of the company and the business as well, and learning to juggle that. But equally, we would expect our associates to be very, not necessarily commercially experienced, but commercially aware as well, because we would want them to be the kind of person that you could put in front of your customers, and for you to have them join in presentations, perhaps participate in events, that kind of thing. So they get a really good balance of technical, more academic work, but also real commercial exposure as well. And a good application will make sure that they achieve both of those things. As I said, bridges the gap between academic and more commercial work. I don't think there are that many graduate schemes that give you £2,000 a year for your training and development as well. So it's a really good opportunity for them to think about their future career and where they want to go, and to have some dedicated time and money as well to help them to do that. The final point there is about a rewarding job with a company at the end. The university won't make any commitment to that, obviously, but I think something like 60% of company partners offer their associate a role at the end. Sometimes this is managing new departments if this has been created as a result of the KTP project. Sometimes it's just about championing the new knowledge within the business and supporting the ongoing growth, but about 60% are offered a job at the end. But as I said, you're under no obligation to do that. So it's a really good opportunity to really get involved in a really great project after their graduation. In terms of the actual associates themselves, the average age of an associate now is 31. The only caveat is that they have to be a recent graduate in an appropriate discipline. But I'm happy to expand on that further if people have questions on that topic. If we can move on again, Peter, that'd be great. So what's in it for the university and the academics? That's a question that businesses ask me quite a lot. Especially the smaller ones. Why would a university want to work with me? Well, the reason for that is because KTP is a really great way of creating valuable contributions to both research and teaching. So from the research perspective, we can use KTP projects to contribute to case studies for the Research Excellence Framework, especially the ones that create real impact for the business and the sector in which they're working. It counts as research income for the university, and academics will be looking to publish papers as a result of their KTP work as well. The average, as you can see there, is 2 papers per project. And as I touched on earlier, it's the opportunity to apply their research in a commercial environment, which is a really valuable thing for the academic community. And from the teaching perspective as well, it's really valuable. So it can be used to contribute to case studies at undergraduate, postgraduate level. Often companies are invited to get involved with guest lectures, and there's also an opportunity for the associate to undertake a higher degree linked to the project where appropriate. There are some caveats with that, but it is a good opportunity if it can be created. So if we can move on again, Peter, that would be great. So my role as the KTP manager, there are people like me in all participating universities around the country. It's very much to, in the initial stages, identify and facilitate the development of relationships between industry and academics. So companies will come to me with an idea or a need. Sometimes it's just about the KTP program, they want to do that. Sometimes it starts with a specific need. And then I will identify appropriate academics within the university who can provide the knowledge that is required, and then facilitate the creation of that partnership and the scoping of the project. I support the development of the proposal itself, as I've touched on. I liaise with the funders on behalf of the partners. I facilitate and minute meetings of the project board, which releases the grant to us every quarter, and also provide whatever admin and procedure related support is required for the duration of the project. So essentially, I provide cradle to grave support for KTP throughout the whole journey. So I'm there as much really or as little as partners require. So that's my role, very much as the starting point for the KTP journey within Brookes. If we can move on, Peter, again, that'd be great. Thank you. You might need to click a few times for that one. Thank you. So just a little flavour of our KTP partners over the years here. Blenheim is the only, I think, current one on there, but you can see there's a real range of different industries, different types of company there. So if we can move on again.
Different sizes of company there as well.
Yeah, definitely. So to touch on our current projects at the moment, we have one with Create Technologies, which normally is based in central Oxford, looking at image processing, and Blenheim Palace Heritage Foundation, which Yayoi will tell you a little bit more about shortly. We've just been awarded 2 more, Sapanor Limited, which is another computer vision based project, and Vitaccess Limited, which is about health data. So out of those, 3 small, 1 large businesses, and we have various others in the pipeline at the moment, looking at things like off-grid building development. There is another one on sensors for the motor vehicle industry, and lots of different topics. So it really is a very, very broad programme in terms of scope and industry. So if we can move on again, Peter. I'll hand over to Yayoi at this point, just to tell you a little bit more about her experiences and what she's up to at Blenheim.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm really happy to be here today. I thought I'd give you a little bit of an overview, both about myself and about the project that I'm working on at Blenheim. So a little bit about me. I was born and raised in Mexico. And then from there, I did a little tour around the world and ended up at Oxford doing a PhD in computational neuroscience. But then around halfway through, I started getting really interested in how technology could be used in museums and heritage. So I did a couple of part-time research projects at the Oxford Internet Institute. One of them was with English Heritage, and the other one was with the Ashmolean Museum. And we were looking at how social media data could be used to understand how visitors were engaging with the different heritage sites or with different spaces in the Ashmolean Museum. And as I finished, I was really lucky that they were recruiting for this KTP and that they thought I was a really good fit. So here I am. And the project that I'm working on at Blenheim is to develop a smart visitor management system. And what this means is we want to get data, different types of data. So from weather to tickets booked, staff who are working on site, knowing what's open and what's closed at Blenheim, to do a little bit about customer insights and predictions. So how many people are going to show up? That is currently a bit easier to know because everyone has to book a time slot before they arrive. But before COVID, it would just be on the day how many people turned up at the door. And then also a little bit about the visitor experience and flow. So from the moment a visitor decides to visit, whether it's through a website or TripAdvisor, all the way until they arrive and decide what they want to do on site, how do we understand that kind of experience, and how do we make it so that it's the best possible? So that's basically what we want to build in the next, or in 32 months. So I have 2 years left of this. Can we go to the next slide?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So I thought I'd give you a flavor of all of the things that Anna has been talking about just in practice. So in the company, I'm working with David Green, who's the head of innovation. And at the university, I'm really lucky that we have Matthias Rolf from the School of Engineering, Computing, and Mathematics, and then 2 people from the business school, Paul Jackson and Diana Lindberg. And then there's me on the associate side. I think that's my little intro, but I'm really happy to answer any questions if there are any at the end or as we go on.
May I ask a quick one, Yayoi? Thank you very much for that. I'm always interested in, when you got there, I mean, I know with Anna's great work in advance, it was, you know, expertly set up, but did they know what to do with you? I mean, that might sound like a silly question, but were they in a good position to work with somebody like you coming in who's in a slightly different role than they would have experienced before? Or did they go through a kind of learning experience themselves on this project about how it was going to work in practice?
I think given the circumstances, so I started the role in July last year, and it was mid-pandemic, still locked down, or maybe not locked down, but we were still all working from home. So given all that, I think the start was really smooth. We all had to adapt to working remotely. I've only been to site about 4 times. So I think these aren't necessarily the most normal times, but it was really easy to integrate both at Blenheim and with the academic team. And we found a really good rhythm to work together. So yes, I think the short answer is I kind of hit the ground running, as it were.
Excellent. Well, perhaps we'll hear a little bit more about it in a minute. And shall we hand back to Anna, and then we'll crack on through the rest of the slides, and then open it up to see if anybody else has got would like to unmute themselves in shortly and ask some questions. But I'll carry on if that's okay, Anna.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, you can move on to the next slide. Thank you. But before I touch on management KTPs, I thought I would just give you my answer to your question, Peter, about the start at Blenheim. I think there are 2 sides to it. Firstly, when we do a KTP application, we do a detailed work plan, broken down into very short kind of 2 week long chunks. So the associate's first job is always to go through that and make sure that it's still relevant to the company, and it gives a structure alongside detailed, obviously, induction processes as well to get started. So we make sure that everything is in place for them when they do start. But the second answer to it, I suppose, is it comes back to what I was saying earlier about the choice of associate is key. We're looking for candidates who can really hit the ground running and not necessarily, you know, take complete charge on the very first day, but associates who are able to show that kind of initiative and drive to make things happen rather than wait to be handheld and told what to do. So in Yayoi's case, she absolutely hit the ground running with that project, and they've achieved far more in the first 3/4 of a year, it must be thereabouts now, than they had expected to. So absolutely comes back to what I was saying, that choice of associate is really, really important for these projects.
But I think the other thing I'm hearing as well is that the whole thing is quite a structured process, but that's done intentionally. So the structure that's in there sort of helps to guard against any sort of ambiguity, which then makes it difficult for the parties involved.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that for sure. Every project is different, but the structure is there and it really does work for these kind of collaborations. Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. So touching on management KTPs now, which I alluded to at the beginning, the management KTPs are essentially the same as the standard program. They work in exactly the same way with the associate, same assessment, success criteria, and so on. But they are very much focused on increasing management capability and associated increases in productivity. So the government back in 2019 put forward 25 million over 3 years to achieve this. Focus predominantly on SMEs, and one of my advisors says that this is not, or this particular stream is not about developing a thing or a program or a system, something like that. It's about the people and upskilling them, increasing the capability, improving decision making, very much using the latest in management theory and management practice. So there's all kinds of angles to this, whether it be coaching and mentoring. You can focus on, I don't know, internal communications mechanisms to increase productivity and help teams work better together. But 25 million over 3 years is available. Obviously, we're coming towards the end of that now, but there is a real amount left in the pot, shall we say, for that. So if you are looking to increase the capability and productivity within your business, let's have a conversation about management KTP and whether or not it could be a good option for you, because there is a lot of money left available for this particular program. What I can do is I will send through some links to yourself, Peter, that can be distributed to delegates to read more about that. But the thing with management KTP is that it's, as I said, it's focused on management practice and implementation of change rather than the development of a thing. So that's the key difference. But again, you know, you can come to us just with your idea and we will be able to advise, is it management KTP or is it standard KTP?
I think that's really interesting to hear about, Anna, because one of the things that companies say to me is, we had a quick look at KTP, but it's all about tech, or it's only for technology companies, which I sort of say, well, no, but that's the impression that people sometimes get. So.
Yeah, and it's been that way for a long time, I think, but, you know, there is a lot of tech related projects, particularly in the AI space at the moment. But I've worked with food companies, I've worked with guide dogs, I've worked with Girl Guides, we've worked with hotels. It really does vary. So, you know, if you fit the criteria about number of staff, affordability and so on, and you do have a project that you know you need some outside knowledge for to move it forward, then get in touch. Let's have a conversation about it, because it really is open to every sector in terms of industry. So if you've got an idea, then please do get in touch and let's chat about it.
Thank you. Yeah, so
okay,
move on.
Yes, please. So I'm not going to go through this in any level of detail now because I'm conscious of the time, but this slide is just designed to show you an example KTP journey. So if you are thinking that it could be an appropriate program for you, then you can either approach your local KTP advisor. There's some links at the end of these slides that will help you to find their contact details. There are 31 of them around the country and they will be able to point you in the right direction. But equally, if you know that you want to work with Brookes, then you can get in touch with me directly. And equally, if you have another university on your radar, you can contact the person like me, the KTP manager at that university, and they will be able to guide you through the whole process of an application and of moving forward and hopefully getting your project funded and underway. Okay, if we can move on. Thank you. we included just at the end here a few typical questions. So just to whiz through those. I don't know if this is KTP or not. Who can I ask? Well, you can ask the KTP managers at universities like myself at Brookes, or you can contact the KTP advisors. They'll be able to help you straight away with any questions in that area. Grant rates we've talked about. 33% for SMEs is their contribution, so 67% grant and 50-50 for large companies. How do the advisor and the KTP manager support KTP? Well, I've talked about that as well, but the idea is that you should, as a partnership, never feel alone at any point in the journey. We are both here to answer any questions, and if something happens in the company, then we're there to guide you through that and to help you figure out whatever's going on. Who owns the IP from a project? There's no hard and fast answer to that because every project is different, but basically the company will be asked to commit to supporting the university's aims for research and teaching, but the university will also commit to the company's aims of realising and hopefully making even bigger the business case and the commercial aims as well. How to go about KTP if you've got a good idea? Just reach out, even if you're not sure what kind of mechanism you need, just reach out to people like me within the university or the KTP advisors and just start having a conversation. I remember once one business approached me with what they were expecting to be a 6-month technical support kind of a request, and within a 2-hour meeting we ended up with a 3-year KTP, and they've gone on to have 2 more KTPs after that point. So yeah, just reach out and just start the conversation. The next one is actually more for the academics, but it might be that an academic likes the idea of a KTP and wants to reach out to local business, and likewise we support them in doing that. How are projects run through their life cycle? Very much supported by me, but the core team, the partnership and the associate will be responsible for the project on a day-to-day basis. There are mechanisms in there that are required for the grant, but once you actually get your grant, once it's funded, it's fairly light touch, and I take most of the responsibility for the reporting going forward. Eligibility I've talked about. Application deadlines, as I said, the next one is April, then June, September and December this year, so about every couple of months. Qualifications for the associate is a really important question. Again, it depends very much on the project. So together with the academics, you'll specify we need somebody with a master's degree in a particular discipline. It may be somebody with a bachelor's degree is perfectly appropriate. Equally, you may need somebody with a PhD. So it really does depend on what your project needs. So we'll specify that through the job creation process. And again, touched on this, how projects run and meetings are required. We have the formal quarterly meetings for the grant monitoring purposes, but other than that, we recommend a weekly meeting between the supervisors and the associate, and then a monthly technical meeting for the whole KTP team. But other than that, it's up to you as a partnership to decide how you're going to manage things going forward. So fairly light touch, as I said. So I think that's it. Is that my last slide, Peter?
I think it's just the one with contacts.
Yes. So just a few websites there. You can reach me through, obviously, the one at the bottom at Brookes. There's lots of information there. It'll take you to both KTP and MKTP. You may see a reference to Africa KTP, but that one isn't progressing at the moment because of a funding review. but there's lots of information on there, and I'm happy to take questions both now and at any point you can reach me.
Fantastic. So thank you very much for that. And thank you to Yayoi as well.